Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit Forest Session. My name is Olivia Lee, and I will be your host for the next 2 hours program. This special breakout session on forest, organized by the Korea Forest Service, is themed Forest for Global Net Zero and Peace. In response to the global climate crisis, the importance of forests as carbon sinks is all the more emphasized to achieve carbon neutrality goals by 2050 and to meet greenhouse gas reduction targets by 2030. At the same time, however, the LULUCF sector, including agriculture and forestry, accounts for 23% of global greenhouse gas emission, which is why we must find ways to utilize in a sustainable and strategic manner our forests. Today's special session on forests will introduce the role of forests as carbon sinks and peacemaker and shed light on the programs and best practices in the global LUCF sector. This session will also allow us to meet forest policies in different countries, international organizations, private sector, and to contemplate furthermore on forest protection and utilization. First, we will have keynote speeches delivered by 4 distinguished guests under the theme of the role of forest in climate crisis. Please welcome Mr. Choi Byung-am, Minister of the Korea Forest Service, Dr. Chu Dong-yu, Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization, Mr. Ibrahim Thiao, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and last but not least, Mr. Chris Coons, Senator of the United States of America. Thank you very much for being with us today. And our first keynote speech will be delivered by Mr. Choi Byung-am, Minister of the Korea Forest Service. Minister Choi is currently playing a key role in presenting Korea's forest policy vision and direction. Today, his speech will be on forest strategy for net zero and peace. Please welcome Mr. Choi Byung-am to the stage.
Distinguished guests, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Byung-ham Choi, Minister of the Korea Forest Service. I'd like to express my gratitude to all the panelists who spared their valuable time for the special breakout session on forest. Despite the pandemic and speakers from abroad who delivered their video messages from the other side of the world, the world has been suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, for over a year. However, the next global crisis is already coming, climate crisis. This is why we are gathered here today to find a solution. I believe that the most important solution is forest. This is because forests are the foundation of the natural ecosystem. Growing forests saves our future generation, and the value grows over time. Certainly, forest is the antidote to our civilization. I'm sure you saw the pictures of a girl at the venue of today's event. This teenage girl is likely to stay alive until the year of 2000. The year 2100 sounds too far to me, but to this girl, 2100 is going to be an ordinary year. 2030 might be one of her college years, and 2050 a year as a mother of her child. Now it is hard for us to cross borders due to COVID-19. To overcome the pandemic, all nations must come together. This is because all nations can go back to normal once COVID-19 is controlled completely. So the first letter P of the P4G Summit, which stands for partnering, has special meaning. Partnering indicates collaboration between governments or public sectors and the private companies. It also means advanced nations and developing countries need to share wisdom, technology, and experience with each other. In fact, the Ethiopian project of the Korea Forest Service has been selected as a P4G partnership project last year. As you see in the left side picture, this is a project of which the governments, public and private sectors of both Korea and Ethiopia. And in the right side, this project aims to restore the forest ecosystem and build a traditional style shade-grown coffee farm. I am confident that this project will successfully restore the forest ecosystem and generate a sustainable income of local residents. Then, this business model will be replicated in other P4G member countries such as Kenya, Vietnam, Colombia, and Indonesia. carbon neutrality or net zero is our ultimate goal, which will be discussed today. The value of forest in climate crisis is outstanding. When a forest is well managed, it is a carbon sink. But if it is mismanaged or burnt, it creates emissions. 80% of land ecosystem biodiversity comes from forest. 75% of fresh water is supplied to cities through forest. The oxygen we breathe in is produced by trees. After all, forests are our life. However, we are losing our forest. The UN General Assembly declared 2021 to 2030 as the decade on ecosystem restoration. In 2020, the World Economic Forum launched the 1 Trillion Trees Initiative, which is getting worldwide support. In last October, Korea also joined this global movement and declared a plan to achieve net zero by 2050. The Korea Forest Service has announced a draft strategy on how to utilize forests to reach net zero by 2050. We are gathering valuable insights from the stakeholders. Our provisional basic plan is to plant 100 million trees every year, totaling up to 3 billion trees in 3 decades. It's the same as every Korean citizen planting 2 trees on average per year. The evergreen forest of Korea will absorb 34 million tons of CO2 a year by the time we reach 2050. And another important role of forest is peace building. Peace building is another vision of the forestation. In addition to global net zero, tree planting is building peace with honesty and sincerity. Just as the UNCCD Executive Secretary already said, Korea launched the Peace Forest Initiative at UNCCD COP14 in September 2019. Peace Forest Initiative is built up the belief that planting trees is building peace. PFI seeks to promote forest restoration of neighboring countries and different ethnic groups. Of course, the PFI contributes to meeting the SDGs. In closing, today's discussion is going to continue until UNFCCC COP26 in November and World Forestry Congress in May next year. I sincerely hope that the World Forest Congress next year will be the first event for all international forest leaders and experts to gather after the pandemic is over. I invite you all to the event. Dr. Wangari Maathai said, when we plant trees, we plant the seeds of peace and seeds of hope. I hope that the outcomes of today's talk will plant the commitment of finding hope and peace through forest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Choi Byung-am, for sharing your insights and Korea's forest policy vision. Let us now watch a short video clip of the 15th World Forestry Congress that was just mentioned by Minister Choi. Moving on, Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, will make a speech on the vision and strategy of PFI, Private Finance Initiative, as a global policy program launched in September 2019.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to join you here today. First, I would like to thank the government of the Republic of Korea for convening this P4G meeting, and in particular, this session on forests. The success of the Republic of Korea in managing and restoring its ecosystems is known worldwide. The case study serves as an inspiration, especially as we launch the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Departing from a break point where both the economy and the ecology of the country were on the brink of collapse, to being recognized as one of the most advanced economies in the world, while bringing the forest cover to 63% in just one generation. And as an active party to the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, the Republic of Korea has shown leadership on multiple occasions. First, from hosting the Conference of the Parties to supporting the most successful Changwon initiative, to the recently developed program called the Peace Forest Initiative, which was launched at the 14th session of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Convention to Combat Desertification in 2019 in New Delhi, India. First introduced by the Republic of Korea, the idea was welcomed by parties to the convention for its value for contributing to achieving land degradation neutrality by caring for our land and forest and contributing to our collective security and stability. Land is a foundation for life on Earth and a fundamental asset for humanity and rural livelihoods. We depend on land for our food security. Land and its ecosystems support our livelihoods and provides us with the clean water we drink and affordable energy. Sustainable land management contributes to mitigating climate change, reducing disaster risk, securing our health. The current pandemic and its zoonotic origin have starkly reminded us. Yet, more than 1/5 of Earth's land area is degraded, undermining the well-being of 3.2 billion people, half of the world population. Land degradation and deforestation are considered as a threat multiplier for insecurity and conflicts. with economic opportunities vanishing due to degradation and availability of natural resources, tensions and competitions are expected to accelerate amongst different land users. And distress migration might be the only option left for land-dependent communities. In fragile and conflict-affected countries, weak institutions and poor governance further exacerbate the degradation of land and natural resources, leading to a vicious cycle of instability. In politically unstable situations, the management of natural resources is even more challenging. Rapid reconstruction often neglects sustainable management of natural resources, undermining future peace. Climate change just adds fuel to the fire. Fortunately, the opposite is also true. Investing in land is also a tool for peace building. If we care for the land and the forest, the land and forests will in turn care for us, and they feed us. Land and forests support our collective well-being. Practical steps can prevent grievances from turning into violent conflicts. With the right institutions and governance systems in place to manage land efficiently, equitably, and sustainably, this is possible. Indeed, the shared management of water, land, forests, wildlife, and protected areas are frequently cited as examples of environmental cooperation for peace building. We can learn from past experiences where countries emerging from conflicts have addressed land and water issues effectively. They have laid the foundation for a durable peace. The most famous example of environmental conservation to mediate hostility between nations is the Cordillera Condor between Peru and Ecuador. But there are many more examples. These peace parks were established as mechanisms for bilateral cooperation when countries are coming out of a conflict. They are used to promote the social, cultural, and economic development of local communities in both countries. One could imagine similar shared management and resources across Africa, Asia, and other parts of the world. It would need a bold vision and flexible governance arrangements, but I have no doubt it would facilitate cooperation between the countries involved. I believe the Global Peace Forest Initiative can serve as a strong vehicle to promote well-being, peace, and prosperity. Thanks to the Peace Forest Initiative, we hope to support more countries, more communities to peacefully address their differences. It can provide a practical tool to facilitate exchanges and cooperation, forging broader partnerships. Nature is a peace builder. Nature is a pacifist. Nature is an inherent unifier. It does not divide. We humans create conflicts. We waged a war on nature itself. This must stop for our own sake, for our survival. We are fortunate as the launching this year of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is a solid framework for these efforts. From a peace-building perspective, whether these differences become a source of division and violent conflicts or an opportunity for positive change and growth depends on how they are understood and addressed. Looking ahead, I wish to share that we are set to take bold strides to pull the Peace Forest Initiative to the level of a full global recognition with support and great success. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the government of the Republic of Korea for its support for enabling the embark on this ambitious journey towards sustainable peace and prosperity for all. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary Mr. Ibrahim Thiaw, for raising awareness on land degradation, but also sharing your vision and strategy of this global policy program. Now our final speech will be delivered by U.S. Senator Mr. Chris Coons. Mr. Chris Coons will present the Trillion Trees and Natural Carbon Storage Act in the US, intended to restore forests in the United States and around the world to achieve carbon neutrality. Let's have a look at his message.
Annyeonghaseyo. Hello, I'm U.S. Senator Chris Coons from Delaware, and I'm honored to be able to address you virtually at the P4G Summit in Seoul, and to discuss the importance of global climate action. I'd like to first thank the P4G initiative for organizing this important summit and for your leadership in helping our world achieve a cleaner future. I also want to thank the government of the Republic of Korea and the Korean Forest Service for inviting me to participate in bringing attention to the important role that forests and our natural world will play in reaching net zero emissions. Our U.S. Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, was so right in recently saying that the U.S.-Korea alliance is the linchpin of peace, security, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. And I'm so pleased that President Moon is soon going to meet with President Biden in Washington, D.C. I last had the opportunity to visit Seoul in April 2019, and I deeply value the close and enduring partnership between the United States and the Republic of Korea. I greatly value our country's partnership and look forward to working closely with Korea on a host of pressing issues, including tackling climate change. Addressing climate change is a top priority for President Biden and many leaders in the United States Congress. Our president has taken significant climate action in just his first few months in office, rejoining the Paris Agreement, committing to eliminate half of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, and committing to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. The only way to meet these ambitious climate goals is for countries around the world to work together, because emissions don't have borders, and neither do the tragic and growing impacts of climate change. Tackling climate change is also one of my top priorities in the U.S. Senate. That's why several years ago I co-founded the bipartisan Senate Climate Solutions Caucus with Senator Mike Braun. Senator Braun and I have also recently introduced the Trillion Trees and Natural Carbon Storage Act, which will help protect and restore healthy forest ecosystems and naturally capture carbon from the air by supporting abundant new tree growth that will also help landowners participate in carbon credit markets. I'm also working with Senator Rob Portman to reauthorize the Tropical Forest and Coral Reef Conservation Act. This bill provides debt relief to developing countries in exchange for long-term commitments to protect tropical forests and coral reefs. This existing program has already protected millions of acres in tropical forests, and we're simply rededicating the United States to extending it. These two bills are just a few of many examples of bipartisan support in the United States Congress for natural climate solutions. I'm also going to be working on other policies to invest in energy innovation, to make communities here more resilient, and to put a price on carbon, just as South Korea and so many of our international partners have already done. Thank you for allowing me to participate today and for your leadership in providing innovative solutions to tackling the climate crisis. I hope you enjoy the remainder of the summit, and I look forward to continuing to work across borders to advance strong climate action and fight for a more sustainable future.
A heartfelt thank you to our speakers for participating in the P4G Seoul Summit Forest session today. And let us now welcome two more individuals for our topic presentations. Mr. Alex Rudy, manager of the World Resources Institute, and Mr. Kim Hyung-soo, founder and chief executive officer of Tree Planet. Mr. Alex Rudy, manager of the World Resource Institute, has analyzed policies and legislative bills for forest restoration in the US and published multiple articles as well as research reports. Today, he will make a presentation on the opportunity of carbon removal from the trees and forests in the US and the legislative proposal.
Hi, my name is Alex Rudy, and I manage work on natural climate solutions in the United States for the World Resources Institute. Thank you so much to the Korea Forest Service for inviting me to participate in the P4G Summit by video, and my apologies that I'm not able to attend the session live. It's an honor to present alongside so many incredible leaders on forest and climate change from all around the world. We now face the stark reality that reducing emissions alone won't be enough to stabilize global temperature rise. We also need to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere at a staggering scale. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made this clear in their 2018 special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. To limit warming to 1.5 degrees, the global economy needs to reach net zero emissions by mid-century. Any emissions we fail to eliminate will need to be recovered directly from the atmosphere. Restoring atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide to safer levels also requires the planet to go net carbon negative, which will require carbon removal capabilities to continue to expand through the end of the century. Carbon removal can include both nature-based approaches and emerging technologies like direct air capture. WRI's research shows that an all-of-the-above strategy on carbon removal is the best approach to ensure we can reach net zero emissions by 2050. This is particularly true in the United States, where we have mapped out the cumulative amount of carbon removal that we believe is possible from various sources over that time. As this chart shows, the single largest near-term opportunity comes from tree restoration. If we start now and scale up to the maximum potential over 20 years, tree restoration could remove 7 gigatons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by 2050 in the US alone. But what exactly do we mean by tree restoration? Well, it includes reforestation of cleared or disturbed land, certainly, but it's also much more than that. We found that restocking forests, particularly in the eastern US, where they've been degraded by unsustainable harvesting practices like high grading or insect infestations and disease, represents the greatest carbon removal potential. There's also value in integrating trees into agricultural land through silvopasture and other agroforestry systems, which build soil health and continue to produce food while increasing carbon removals. And finally, integrating more trees into our cities is critical not just for the carbon removal, but for a wide variety of other social and environmental benefits. Altogether, we could grow up to 60 billion new trees in the US by taking full advantage of these opportunities for tree restoration. These trees could remove up to 540 million tons of carbon dioxide per year from the atmosphere at their full potential. That's equal to all the annual emissions from the US agricultural sector. Of course, growing billions of new trees won't be easy or free. It'll require ambitious federal policy and investments from both the public and private sector. WRI's research shows that overcoming financial barriers to restoring trees at scale in the US will require new public investment of $4 to $4.5 billion per year, sustained over 20 years. The majority of that is needed for incentives for private landowners like farmers and forest owners, since about 90% of the tree restoration opportunity occurs on private lands. But there's also a piece that needs to go to federal agencies to address the backlog of restoration projects on federal land. Even with that amount of funding, though, there's no guarantee that the full benefits from carbon removal will be realized, and that's why federal policy requires science-based safeguards. These include ecological safeguards to ensure that the right trees are planted in the right places, with a focus on native trees in historically forested landscapes. It includes agricultural safeguards to make sure that tree restoration does not come at the expense of food production. And it includes monitoring safeguards that account for emissions from timber harvesting or from land clearing, in addition to removals from growing new trees. We will also need additional investments beyond the tree restoration projects themselves to lay the groundwork for a scalable national campaign. These needs include building out our tree nursery capacity, which would need to more than double just to accommodate new reforestation demand, as well as expanding technical assistance for private landowners and strengthening our national forest carbon inventory by using new remote sensing technologies like spaceborne LiDAR. There are several current proposals in Congress that would address many of these needs. Senator Coons, who you heard give a keynote address just minutes ago, introduced the bipartisan Trillion Trees and Natural Carbon Storage Act, which would set national targets for carbon removal from forests and other lands, invest in nurseries, and improve monitoring capabilities. Another important proposal is the Climate Stewardship Act, which would provide billions of dollars to landowners for practices like tree planting that remove carbon. And the Bipartisan Replant Act would address the need on federal lands by expanding the Reforestation Trust Fund. These are just a few of the most promising bills before Congress. We now need the support to pass these pieces of legislation, showing that the US can lead on this issue and begin to work to restore billions of trees across our country. Here at WRI, we have several initiatives underway to accelerate tree restoration, both in the United States and around the world. In addition to our research in support of federal policy in the US that I've drawn from today, we also engage states through the US Climate Alliance Impact Partnership in developing their own plans to remove carbon from the air through tree restoration and other natural solutions. Internationally, our Global Restoration Initiative has a strong track record on this issue through programs like Initiative 20 by 20 in Latin America and the Caribbean, AFR 100 in Africa, and the recently launched TerraMatch platform. In addition, Global Forest Watch has also become the premier tool to monitor forest loss around the world, showing the size of the deforestation problem that we must also solve in order for tree restoration and other solutions to have our desired impact on the climate. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you all will join WRI in working toward tree restoration as well as forest conservation, both in the United States and around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. That was Mr. Alex Rudy, manager of the World Resource Institute. Next, we will have an on-site presentation. Let me now introduce Mr. Kim Hyung-soo, founder and chief executive officer of a Korean social venture company called Tree Planet. Mr. Kim has also participated in P4G partnership project in Ethiopia. And in today's session, he will present P4G partnership business model, agroforestry for people and peace and prosperity in southern Ethiopia's coffee growing region. Please welcome him with a warm applause.
Hello everyone, my name is Hyung-soo Kim, CEO of Tree Planet. Thank you for coming. I can starting to my introduce and my presentation. Presentation subject is the power of the partnership. Wood and lumber produce fruit and provides for homes for animals. But today, trees are cut down to pass. Desertification and fine dust and forest fire and COVID-19. Tree planting started in 2010, the creative way to planting trees for every people all over the world. We built 300 forests with 100 million trees and planted 13 countries until the 10 years. First step is the tree planting game. This game is very simple. You can grow up the virtual tree, we will planting the real tree. But you can using the advertisement item, such as the fertilizer and solar power water pump, and receiving the advertisement item fee and donating to the NGO. Let's show you the video.
게임을 좋아하는 지연이가 나무를 심으면 어디선가 진짜 나무가 심어집니다. 지연이의 나무가 자랍니다. 게임을 하다, 환경을 살리다.
The trees, the virtual world were planted in China desert in 2013. We can plant the tree and together solar power system because they don't using the solar power system, so they can keep the water. So 2017 it changed the world. It's planting the tree and grow well. Do you like the BTS? So many K-pop stars and fan clubs is so many where. So we can build up to the BTS forest and girls' generation forest with together the star fan clubs. Let's show you the video.
자신이 사랑하는 스타의 이름이 붙여진 나무들은 그들만의 특별한 날에 심어졌다. 1992년 5월 6일에 태어난 백현 오빠를 위해서 2014년 5월 6일에 숲을 만들었습니다.
가까이 할 수 없는 스타 대신 팬들은 숲을 가꾸고 돌본다. 그리고 자연스럽게 숲을 사랑하는 마음으로 이어진다.
제가 백현 오빠를 사랑하는 만큼 나무를 정말 열정적이게 키우도록 하겠습니다.
졸업하기 전까지 절대 시들지 않게
할머니 돼서도
할게요.
올게요. 전 영원한
네.
엑소엘이니까.
I'm a tree hugger, but they are tree lover, maybe. Next is Forest in Peace. Remember the event that our society should not forget and pay our respect the brave citizen. So 5 years ago, we have the very big accident in Seoul Memorial. It's a problem. So we made the Seoul Memorial Forest with the Audrey Hepburn's family. Let's show you the video.
Thank you very much for coming. We are here today as a family, not as politicians, not even as humanitarians, but as a family to extend our hand and our heart to all the families that have been affected by the tragedy of the sinking of the MVC wall. A year has now passed, and instead of sending flowers to the families, we wished to create something beautiful, a natural platform amidst all of the investigations, all of the pain, all of the politics. We wanted to create a platform that would bring some feelings of hope, comfort, and that would create a place from which everyone can work towards a future.
We're working together with the Audrey Hepburn's Children Foundation, and we built up to the Seoul Memorial Forest in Jindo. Next is collaboration with the Korean Forest Service and Make Your Farm. This is a crowdfunding program. You can crowdfunding, we can planting the coffee trees. The first step is this project to establish the eco-friendly coffee farms in southwest Ethiopia. Planting the coffee tree and shady tree together, and together is a solar power system and washing station. Is all of that. Coffees need to the shade tree. And this shade tree is making the natural fertilizer, and this is very organic and sustainable solution. We can making the crowdfunding, all of that sold out. So we're making the very high quality coffee reward. So with the Terra Rosa is Korea #1 the specialty coffee company. And this coffee is launched in the shared office. It's like the WeWork. It's 11 offices launched now. We are a B Corp certified, and the tree planting is forest social impact is $220 million, and we're planting tree every day is 300 trees. We work together, Korea Forest Service and GGI, SK Forest. Together. I was an environmental documentary film director and became a social entrepreneur. So we had an excellent partner working together for over 10 years. Now our goal is the planting 100 million of trees, plant for. Thank you.
Next will be a panel discussion chaired by Ambassador Hyo-eun Jenny Kim, Deputy Director General of the Global Green Growth Institute. And we have the great honor to be joined by 5 panelists today. Ambassador Frode Solberg, His Excellency Norwegian Ambassador to Korea, Mr. Ricardo Calderon, Executive Director of the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization, Ms. Milagros de Camps, Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources of the Dominican Republic, Mr. Germain Velazquez, Director of Mitigation and Adaptation Division of the Green Climate Fund, Mr. Chong In-bo, Chief Executive Officer at SK Forest. And lastly, Dr. Park Eun-sik, Director General of the Korea Forest Service, who will answer questions on behalf of the panelists who could not join today's session.
Thank you, Olivia. As emphasized by previous speakers and presenters, forest can play a significant role in transitioning into a low-carbon, resilient world of strong, inclusive, and sustainable growth. As we know, forests provide food, medicines, wood, fiber, and employment. They moderate fresh water flows, clean the air, and influence regional and community precipitation. Globally, forests provide a home to 70 million indigenous people and accommodate 80% of biodiversity on the planet. In addition, forests play a critical role in the fight against climate change by removing CO2 from the atmosphere. But unfortunately, forests and their ability to provide these wonderful benefits are under a serious threat, as we all know. In 2019, the world lost roughly 1 soccer field of forest every 6 seconds. The expansion of agriculture, mining, timber extraction, and other unsustainable practices are destroying and degrading forests around the world. Deforestation and forest degradation account for approximately 11% of carbon emissions, more than the entire global transportation sector. As a result, halting deforestation and helping forests recover naturally could provide up to 30% of the climate solution. If tropical deforestation was a country, it would rank the 3rd in CO2 emissions, only behind China and the United States. Therefore, forest is essential in achieving UN Sustainable Development Goals and implementation of Paris Climate Agreement. So, in this panel discussion, we will exchange ideas and experiences how to maximize the role of forest, the best natural solution to humanity's urgent climate crisis. We will also share views how forests can contribute to build peace and restore community as well, because forestation and agroforestry in degraded lands and conflict areas can provide opportunities to build community spirit and economic growth potential. So we have excellent panelists delivering diverse perspectives and views on the role of policies, projects, finance, and entrepreneurship on forest. His Excellency Ambassador of Norway to the Republic of Korea is joining virtually. Mr. Ricardo Calderon, Executive Director of AFOCO, is here with us. And Ms. Milagros de Camps, Deputy Minister from the Dominican Republic, is joining online as well. And Dr. Germain Velazquez, Director from Green Climate Fund, is with us. Mr. Chong In-bo, Chief Executive Officer from SK Forest, thank you for your presence. Also, Director General Park Eun-sik from Korea Forest Service is joining. So I would like to ask a question to all panelists. I'd like to invite you to elaborate the key efforts of your country, your organization, or your company to make forest as a key driving force in climate action, community restoration, and peace building. I also ask you to share your best practices or key lessons learned from your experiences. Deforestation and land degradation are more serious in developing countries. However, there is still a perception or view that natural conservation is only possible in rich countries, not relevant in developing countries. However, I am sure that you have good evidence and also success stories that forests can create more opportunities for sustainable economic growth. So I explained a little bit long. However, in a nutshell, my question is mainly three things. Please explain what your organization, your country, your company is doing, and what are the best practices and lessons learned. And thirdly, I would like to ask you to share what will be the next steps towards global net zero and peace by fostering forest. So let me invite the ambassador from Norway first, and then I will invite next panelists. Ambassador, please.
Dear Madam President, dear Minister Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Let me first start by thanking the Korea Forest Service for the opportunity to say a few words at this important seminar on forests for global net zero and peace, which is a part of the P4G Seoul Summit's Green Future session on forests. Today's seminar is important, as it will highlight the effects of forests as having the greatest potential for carbon removal and explore ways to strengthen international cooperation through forests. Destruction of forests threatens millions of people, often among the world's most vulnerable, and whom many are depending on forests in their daily life. But all of us should be concerned, as this is a development that has serious effects for the whole global community. Unless we manage to halt tropical deforestation swiftly, we will not reach the Paris goals, with the consequences that will have for all of us. The Republic of Korea has successfully launched the Peace Forest Initiative, together with the UNCCD Secretariat. In many parts of the world, conflicts tend to be linked to forest areas. Many such conflicts extend beyond borders and involve more than one country. Conflicts over natural resources are common. Parties in ongoing conflicts often revert to illegal logging and illegal export of forest products as a source of quick cash. Some conflicts are caused by, or made worse by, an unresolved dispute on land, tenure, and access to resources. Therefore, land restoration and programs to support sustainability in land use can be powerful tools for promoting peace. We are very glad to see that the Republic of Korea has submitted its revised NDC and are stepping up to the net zero emissions by 2050 challenge. This is in many ways quite parallel to Norway, and we note that many of the strategies to be used also are similar. Last year, Norway released a plan for curbing domestic climate gas emissions, and our ambition, as expressed in the revised NDC, is to reduce emissions by at least 50% by 2030. In both countries, the use of forests as carbon sinks is one of many elements of the strategy. Time is running out to protect our tropical forests from irreversible loss. A new type of collaboration is essential to fight the climate crisis and achieve net zero emissions globally by 2050. This is why Norway is proud to have joined our partners in the Reef coalition, which is bringing together government and private sector resources to support the large-scale efforts that must be mobilized to halt deforestation. Let me conclude by underlining our gratitude for the close and continuous cooperation we have with the Korea Forest Service. We hope this seminar could serve as a platform for increased level of global cooperation in helping countries reduce their deforestation, enhance restoration, as well as improving the livelihoods of forest-dependent people. And not the least, it could inspire us all to even stronger commitments. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Ambassador Solberg. Actually, Norway is a leading country regarding supporting forestation, not only domestically, but globally. Okay, next, I would like to invite Mr. Ricardo Calderon, Executive Director from Asia Forest Cooperation Organization. Actually, AFOCO is a regional organization specifically focusing on forest collaboration. Therefore, I believe that you have many stories to share regarding forest's role as carbon neutrality vehicle. So, Ricardo, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Ricardo Calderon, the Executive Director of the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization. Our presentation will basically focus on the role of AFOCO on the global net zero and peace. The COVID-19 has significantly slowed economic growth, disrupted processes in the supply chain, increased unemployment and inequalities and livelihood of countries around the world. However, global platform and initiatives for government are in place, including the private sector, for the world to build back better and realize sustainable development without threatening the health of planet Earth. The recently concluded 16th session of the United Nations Forum on Forests, wherein the forum considered the interlinkages between the global forest goals and target and Sustainable Development Goal. The UN Decade of Ecosystems Restoration that aims to support and scale up efforts to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradation of ecosystems worldwide, and raise awareness of the importance of successful ecosystems restoration. The 15th session of the Conference of Parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that built around the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature. The 26th session of the Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and the submission of the updated nationally determined contributions, wherein forests may be part of the sectoral targets or part of the economy-wide target. The Bonn Challenge to restore 350 million hectares by 2030, the Davos 1 trillion tree initiative that aims to unite and promote reforestation efforts worldwide, mobilize funds and political support, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development Forest Solutions Group that aims to advance the bioeconomy and a thriving forestry sector, healthy, productive forests, and people, including the well-being. And presently, the P4G Summit here in Seoul, wherein the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization organized a side event entitled Forest-Based Solution, a Path to Build Back Better, reiterating the role of forests in the global net zero ambition. In the Asian region, the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization, with its 13 parties and 2 observers, envisioned for a greener Asia, resilient forests, landscape, and communities. Granted observer status in the 75th session of the UN General Assembly and accredited as an ODA-eligible international organization by the OECD Development Assistance Committee that provided for the strong basis for AFOCO in joining the global initiative for regional action on the role of forests in global net zero, forest-based solutions, and sustainable development. As far as the objectives of AFOCO, we contribute to our member countries' actions on achieving the global forest goals of increasing forest cover of up to 3% worldwide from the current level of 31.2%, assist in policy development, develop adaptation and mitigation actions in implementing the Paris Agreement for the forest sector, and improving the livelihood of forest-dependent communities through the investment in economically viable forest enterprises. Our AFOCO project funds and AFOCO portfolio investments on landmark programs and regional multi-country programs fosters close cooperation and meaningful participation among our member parties. Our country-driven projects support country priorities under the country-specific national strategy. We are expanding our partnership and coverage beyond the forest sector through the Landscape Partnership Asia in partnership with C4 and Global Evergreening Alliance. We are striving to restore 10 million hectares of dry lands and drought-prone areas in South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia by 2032. Our focused landmark and regional programs and county-driven projects serves as a platform for exchange of technical expertise and technical cooperation as we open the line of communication through technical discussion, sharing of project experiences and milestones. Our training programs at the Regional Education and Training Center for policymakers and frontline forestry personnel enhances forest governance, improve capacities of forest institutions, and sharpen the technical skills of frontline forestry practitioners. Our capacity development program includes science and technology exchange partnership for our forest researchers, graduate scholarship program for Asian government officials, our fellowship exchange for officials of member parties for knowledge enhancement. AFOC also facilitate access of member parties to diverse sources of funding mechanisms and help equip themselves with skills and capacities in communication, networking, and fund mobilization. Through the Landscape Partnership Asia with its founding members C4 and the Global Evergreening Alliance, wherein AFOCO is performing the dual role as founding partner and at the same time the secretariat, AFOCO envisions to build robust partnership amongst government, efficiently mobilize financial, human, and technical resources to achieve transformational change within landscape in the rehabilitation of 10 million hectares of dry lands and drought-prone areas in South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia by 2032. As a formal multilateral development organization, the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization shall continue to provide the bridge in order to enhance cross-sectoral cooperation and broaden coordination among member parties, partner institutions on the management of forests for the sustainable production of economic goods and ecosystem services, biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation, and adaptation in order to achieve sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. Yes, we have heard the activities and efforts by one developed country and one regional organization. So now I'd like to move to a developing country. Therefore, Ms. Milagros Ticam, Deputy Minister from Dominican Republic, her message is ready. So let's hear the views from a developing country.
Greetings to all from the Dominican Republic. We are delighted to announce in this important summit our intention to adhere to the Peace Forest Initiative, an initiative which accelerates the implementation of the United Nations Convention to combat desertification by creating a network to facilitate knowledge exchange and multilateral cooperation in order to improve the livelihood of communities affected by land degradation and ensuring peace through joint management of transnational resources. We're confident that through enhancing cooperation between our countries, together we will be able to deliver land degradation neutrality and the achievement of SDG 15 of protecting, restoring, and promoting sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, and consequently combating desertification. More specifically, our membership in this alliance will leverage some of Dominican Republic's LDN goals, which include, by 2025, restoring 30,000 hectares of dry forest with early signs of deterioration and incremental reduction of productivity, and by 2030, increasing forest cover by 8.5% through reforestation and conservation and reducing by 50% the total area affected by forest fires with emphasis in our border zone. These ambitions are in line with the global need for increasing the boldness of our climate actions to secure our net zero commitments while keeping 1.5-degree goal within reach. the Dominican Republic believes that in light of the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement, triangular and South-South cooperation will play a pivotal role as effective mechanisms to address the mounting challenges of the climate crisis. In the case of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, as two countries sharing a common island, the impact of climate change cuts across our geopolitical boundaries and across social, economic, and political dimensions, therefore making us natural allies during the green recovery process to build forward better. In an encounter between the Ministry of Environment of both countries in January this year, we made a commitment to assist each other in the attainment of our goals in broad areas such as biodiversity, climate change, desertification, and forest management. In this context, working together within the Peace Forest Initiative not only will improve our governance of joint resources in a spirit of goodwill and collaboration, but it will also boost economic resilience and reduce vulnerability and disaster risk in our border. In a recent monitoring to determine areas affected by desertification and drought in the border, we identified important areas of opportunity related to soil erosion, land use conflict, and water availability and quality. In these communities, an interdisciplinary approach is all the more important, as environmental degradation is inextricably linked with poverty, migration, low technology, and traditional and cultural practices. Some potential activities for a PFI project would be creating a baseline and collecting accurate data of forest-related and other environmental indicators, implementing pilot projects of climate-smart agriculture, creating opportunities for sustainable tourism, strengthening participation mechanisms, restoring critical areas for biodiversity and water production, and creating awareness around soil degradation. There are already strong commitments at the highest levels to make every effort to tackle deforestation and desertification and reduce risks of resource conflict between our countries, which will need to be coupled with sound policymaking and institutional coherence, efficient multi-level coordination, access to finance, the creation of an investment portfolio, and innovation and technological transfer. We hope that this P4G Summit, and especially this special breakout session on forests, can deliver strong results and bolster the will of a broad range of actors to achieve green growth, climate change action, and the global goals towards 2030.
Thank you, Ms. Deputy Minister. Thank you for sharing your country's strong political willingness to restore forest and also your support to Peace Forest Initiative. So although Dominican Republic is a developing country, I'm quite sure that in forest, you are a leading country globally. Now, I'd like to move to next panelist, Dr. Germain Velazquez, Director of Mitigation and Adaptation from Green Climate Fund. So, Dr. Director, actually, Green Climate Fund is a fund uniquely mandated to support developing countries' climate change action. And I'm sure that forest is a critical part of your organization's portfolio. Therefore, if you are going to share how GCF is supporting developing countries regarding forest, what other success stories, what lessons your organization has learned, it will be very, very helpful for other developing countries. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know the Green Climate Fund, we are a critical part of the Paris Agreement. In fact, we were created to be an instrument, a financial instrument of the Paris Agreement. And we are mandated to help countries, in fact, in their fight on climate change, to help them in their climate resilient and low emission pathways, to help them implement their ambitions as articulated in their national determined contributions. We have 8 areas that we invest in. It's shown in this graph, and these are the amounts of funding that we have invested so far. We're quite, very good that we can invest in a wide range of areas. And as you can see here, there are 2 particular areas that are of interest to forest and land use, and that is ecosystems and ecosystem services. That's the 3rd area. And the last one, which is forest and land use. However, all of these areas contribute to our work on forestry. Working with our partners, we have invested so far $8.3 billion. with a total funding size, including co-finance, of $30 billion. The amount of investments that we have invested on forestry and ecosystems is about close to $2 billion. Now, what do we do on forestry and land use? What's the focus of the GCF? We focus on one, conservation, because we think that conserving is the cheapest and most cost-efficient approach. The other thing is that in our work, we think that there are simply carbon that is irreplaceable. We should not allow it to be released. So for these ecosystems, like for example, peatlands, our approach is conservation. So conservation areas is a particular core area. It's a very efficient investment area for us. The second is restoration. You've already heard that there is the decade of restoration coming up, but restoration is particularly more costly than conservation, but it's a very important aspect of work that we do. The third one is sustainable use, because forests are not there not to be used. There are also important aspects to be harmoniously used by people. So therefore, forests need to be used for livelihood, so sustainable use and sustainable management. Now, the work that we do so far is actually, because of the ability of the GCF to invest at scale, we invest in landscapes, total landscapes. So we look at the whole jurisdictions. We are able to work in the totality of the jurisdiction. The other thing is that we work on trying to make or encourage zero emission supply chains and private sector initiatives. We also do social forestry, and finally, REDD+. So this is another thing that we do. We invest in small entrepreneurs. We invest in small and medium-sized enterprises, but at the same time, we also invest in engaging and leveraging private sector. So those we all do. The other thing that's very important for the GCF is we put people at the heart of our investments, because forestry is about people. And it's very important that we, in fact, target people, and we have a very strong indigenous people policy, because we believe that forestry needs to be working hand in hand with people. So safeguards and protection is at the heart of our investments. The other thing is that there was some talk about the Great Green Wall. This is one of our flagship programs for the Great Green Wall. And in here, the work that the GCF is doing actually leverages all of the investment areas that we do. So we not only try and encourage forestry, we also try and manage the land, but also we try and promote renewable energy access. So the totality, and also livelihoods. So the totality of our investment in the Sahel to try and promote a wall of forest to stop the spread of desertification in Africa is a very important work that we're doing, not just for climate change, but also for development. Now, there was some talk about REDD+, and in 2017, the GCF started what we call results-based payments. So we started with an initial allocation of $500 million. So we pay $5 a ton for emission reductions of countries, and so far, we have invested in 8 countries: Brazil, Ecuador, Chile, Paraguay, Colombia, Indonesia, Argentina, and Costa Rica, producing about 100 million tons of emission reductions so far. Now we've learned a lot in our work on REDD+, and the things that we have learned include equity, safeguards, and also the role of the GCF in non-market and market, because there was some question, I think, in a little bit earlier about the role of the private sector. We are also asking ourselves, what is the role of GCF on how do we encourage private sector in forestry investment? Because if we only pay $5 a ton, that means that if we invest the totality of our $10 billion, it's not going to be enough, because the need for forest restoration and conservation will be in billions, if not in trillions. So the only way is to get the private sector to invest. And one question is that why would the private sector invest in forestry? Now, there are these net zero goals, and as we know, it's not just the governments, it's also the private sector. And for them, it's either they invest, they make part of their business towards climate change, or if they cannot do that, to meet the net zero goal, they have to buy emission reductions. Now, why don't they invest or buy reductions from forestry? That's the question. And there are a lot of problems. One problem, of course, is regression. Because what if you invest and there's a forest fire? So therefore, what you invested is gone. So we have to ensure that there is no regression. The second thing is traceability. When I invest, I need to know where it is. And the third problem is that it's not just carbon, it's also about people. And as I've said, forestry, if you're not careful, you could displace indigenous people. It's a very important aspect that you do not serve one against another goal. So it's ESG, environment, sustainability, and governance. So most private sector are interested in the totality of these three. So without dealing with all of that, we cannot get the private sector to invest. So what is the future? With the negotiations of the Climate Change Convention on Article 6 and the possibility of the growth of carbon markets, and there's a lot of projection of the voluntary carbon market growing tremendously in the coming years, the question is, what is the role of the GCF in that? Are we a public sector entity that just pays $5 a ton? Or is there a role for us to encourage private sector investments so that then we could enable them to actually meet their net zero goal? So that's, I think, the future. We have no answer yet, but we're waiting for the negotiations to continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing GCF's vision and activities. Also, you emphasized a lot about the role of private sector. When we are talking about climate change action and net zero by 2050, many experts, they say public money is not enough at all, and government's efforts are not enough at all, and private sector's participation, their investment is crucial. Therefore, I'm very pleased to invite one panelist from private sector, Chief Executive Officer from SK Forest, Mr. Chung In-bo is here. So yes, from the private sector's perspective, why your company is interested in forest, what activities your company is doing, where are you investing, please share your experience and vision. Please.
Thank you, Jenny. 안녕하세요. I'm In-bo Chung, CEO of SK Forest. First of all, it's an honor to be part of a panel at this P4G Summit Forest session. I hope that this event will spread out a bond of sympathy around the world about the importance of the forest as a carbon sink. As you know, SK Forest is one of the largest forestry and landscape architecture company in Korea, established about 50 years ago. Back then, Korea was one of the poorest country in the world, and people used trees as means of heating and cooking. As you can see in the picture above, there were almost no trees in the mountains. Our former chairman, Jong-yeon Chae, in SK's terminology, he designed the future of Korea by planting trees in the devastated mountains in deserted area, and by providing full scholarship for higher education to students with potential to become world-class leader in all walks of life. Big picture he had in mind was that when the trees grow in full, they could become the source of the scholarship fund, but it never really did happen due to various reasons. But instead, now we are facing a climate crisis, and maybe carbon issue might give us opportunity to fulfill his former chairman's dream. By all means, maybe it's fair to say that the social value and ESG management that SK pursues today began with the afforestation of former chairman. In recent years, SK Forest and SK affiliate companies worked together to make our world full of greener landscape. We started our overall project by building forests and parks in the dry Uzbekistan Navoy area. And we restored some Tunisia's corkwork trees as well. In Vietnam, SK Innovation employees visit multiple times a year to plant mangrove trees alongside the coastline. Since May 2018, more than 160,000 trees have been planted on 40 hectares. And also, SK Forest with many partners started ARCDM project for first time in Korea to restore 75 hectares of land that had been neglected as just a pasture. Well, some of you may have already heard of SK approach to collaborate and win together with the stakeholders. Throughout the years, concepts have changed from creating social value to creating stakeholders' happiness to creating social value. And now we are more focusing on ESG management. Well, having said that, to meet minimum environmental requirements, SK is planning to offset all of Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions by 2050. We are pursuing every method possible to meet the goal. But as you can see, still there are quite a gap to fill. MBS is one of our focal areas to enlarge the amount of carbon offset. To make that happen domestically, SK Forest is designing a structure to support and revitalize private forestry sector to cultivate better trees and enhance carbon sink. Within better trees, within frame, we are hoping to make a carbon credit trading to companies in need to attain net zero targets required by vendors in value chains. All in all, if this endeavor happens, it will help Korea meet the net zero goal by 2050. Global-wide forestry is another target area for SK Forest in years to come. Now we are collaborating with KFS and counterpart countries to select suitable sites for REDD+ and ARCDM projects. We have no limitation for selection, but for now, we are mainly looking into South Asia, South America, and Africa. Also, we are developing eco-friendly businesses that can respond to climate change and sustainable life. As you all see, socio-economic changes brought up planetary needs. We are constantly studying changes around us to capture the opportunity and provide just-in-fit products. Furthermore, we are transforming all of our existing business into eco-friendlier and more vegan to meet new generations' expectations. And last but not least, we are planning to open up our assets and infrastructures to more people to enjoy and experience and realize the importance of the forest and trees via camping events and pop-up gardens. Thank you all for listening to our stories. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Mr. Jung, for sharing your company's vision and activities. I believe the former chairman of SK Group, Choi Jong-hyun, he was indeed a man of vision because he invested a lot to natural resources and human resources. And during his time, there was no term like ESG. However, now ESG is a new norm and principle of private sector's activities. Therefore, I congratulate your company for leading the efforts of ESG now. So we have heard the perspectives and views from governments, international organizations, and private sector. By the way, as far as I know, it was emphasized at the Minister of Forest's speech as well. The 15th World Forestry Congress will be held in Seoul, Korea next year, 2022. And I would like to invite two international organizations heads, international organizations representatives, yes. So APOCO and GCF, both organizations are located in Korea. And I am sure that you are working very closely with the Korea Forest Service in preparation for World Forestry Congress. World Forestry Congress must be a global gathering to reconfirm the strong commitment regarding forest as a main vehicle to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and peace building, community restoration as well. Therefore, if I just invite you to share briefly what will be your suggestion or recommendation to Korean government as the host country of the Congress to lead. So if you make any suggestion to Korea to lead this matter regarding forestry, it will be very useful for Korea KFS to be better prepared.
Yes. We are very much work very closely with the Korea Forestry, Korea Forest Service along this line. In fact, we are already discussing on the pre-Congress event for the World Forestry Congress. And this is a Congress, we will name it Asia Forestry Congress as a prelude to the World Forestry Congress. We're planning to highlight research institutions and share, it's like a research forum. And then in the morning and in the afternoon, we're planning to have a capacity development program as a forum also, because these are two very important low-hanging fruit. It's a low-hanging fruit as far as forest and forestry. You know, forest and forestry is not just a sector. It's an activity and a process. And research and capacity development is a very important component when it comes to forestry restoration activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much sharing your support to Korea Forest Service from APOCO. So GCF must have suggestions, recommendations for Korea to lead in preparation for World Forestry Congress. Please.
Thank you very much. It will be our pleasure to contribute to the World Forestry Congress. From the GCF side, we would be more than happy to share the lessons that we've learned over the past several years of our investments, especially on REDD+, results-based payments. There's a lot of lessons learned. It would be very interesting for us to understand how the evolving carbon markets, market, non-market instruments will play a role in forestry. So I think we would be more than happy if this is a topic to contribute to that in the Congress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe Mr. Park, if you want to add, if you want to respond briefly to the international organization representatives regarding World Forestry Congress next year? Yes.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you very much for your suggestion and opinion. Actually, I am the Secretary General for the World Forest Congress Secretariat. So maybe your participation will be highly appreciated. So I'd like to add some more of my opinion on this session on behalf of my minister and my organizations. I'd like to thank you all for accepting the invitation to this special session on forest. I think this session is very meaningful to us. Today we were able to see how much important forest is in achieving global net zero and peace. So it is clear that this session has been a great opportunity to share the global effort to address climate change. So also I'd like to ask for your continuous support and interest in the global forestry sector's effort, particularly the 15th World Forest Congress, which will be held in May next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General Park. So at this session, we all confirmed that planting tree is planting a better future. So let's make carbon neutral, peaceful future happen by planting trees, by conserving forest. And I thank all speakers, panelists, and audience for your excellent contribution and inspiring presentation as well. So I'd like to bring this session to the end. I wish all of you stay in a good health, and let's meet in World Forest Congress next year in Seoul. Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good afternoon.
This has been the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit special breakout session on forest. We would like to extend our sincere gratitude to our guests, participants, and also viewers online who stayed with us until the end of the program. So thank you once more, and we hope you enjoyed the rest of the P4G Summit. 감사합니다.